It's finally here. After a year of waiting, Five Nights at Freddy's has entered the realm, and the anniversary is next week, so this will be part 1 of this month's festivities. But enough with the talking, and let's open this update up like a fresh pizza pie. The animatronic, also known as Springtrap, is here, a fan-favorite character, being the killer of the franchise, and the obvious pick. It's still a shame we didn't get a survivor, but the collections that we got will have to suffice. On top of the new killer, we've got a new map inspired by the pizzeria where the horrors occurred, and the usual balance changes, quality of life changes, and the perk showcase on Wraith. But with all that said and done, let's talk about the main attraction. Just a quick note, however, I just wanted to say, with the release of this chapter, Dead by Daylight have made their own official stats tracker. I'm pretty sure it starts the moment you link your behavior account to your account, since it doesn't have my 100 plus hours maining Ash, Trapper, or Doctor. But now that we have an official way to see our stats and recent matches, it will be nice, or scary, to check every now and again, and see how much you suck at certain killers. But with all that said and done, onto the man behind the slaughter.
Want a break from the ads?
The animatronic, better known as Springtrap, or if you want to nerd max, William Afton, is the first killer starting off the 9th year of Dead by Daylight. He's a very interesting killer with multiple different mechanics, so let's start off with the basics and then work up from there. Springtrap is a 110% movement speed killer by default. The fire axe must be Herculean in weight, as after you throw it, Springtrap goes to be your M1 killer speed of 115%. He uses a knife, but the fire axe is the damaging part of his power. I've always been interested in how much fan media has William Afton used an axe. My best guess is the Living Tombstone song started it, but if you guys have any official FNAF material that has Springtrap with an axe, I would love to see it because I've always been curious. Anyways, this fire axe power is interesting. It works somewhat like an arc, but gains more weight at the end, usually leaning for it to slam down. Unlike something like Huntress, so orbitals are a little different. It goes over loops rather than across the map. The add-on Freddy's hat is pretty good if you want to do it, but I'm still not used to his power yet, so I'm avoiding it for the time being because it feels like a completely different power. Now, when you throw the fire axe, either two things can happen. The first thing is the axe hits and impales itself into the survivor's back, making them broken. This happens when they're fully healed or put into deep wounds. If they're injured, they just go down. Survivors are able to remove the axe from their back, but if you're able to make the distance, you can reclaim the axe and then grab the survivor as well. If you don't hit them, the area around the axe will have a neat effect, and if survivors are in there, they get killer instincts for the time they're in there. There are some neat add-ons that give effects when the axe is on the ground, on top of being 150% movement speed, but for the most part, you'll be down a range ability and will have to play it straight until you choose to reclaim the axe. The ability is very easy to grasp, but has a solid skill expression. You can use the axe to go over loops if you're confident enough using aura reading to help, or focus more on having M1 with support add-ons with the axe on the ground. His add-ons give you so much room to express fun builds, which I really like. The add-ons feel more like they add on than just being bigger numbers. Some killers could learn a thing or two from that. However, it wouldn't be FNAF without the other part of his power, the cameras and doors around the map. 7 security doors will show up. Both the killer and survivor can interact with it. Both killer and survivors can use it to traverse the map. The survivors take a bit longer, while the killer, it's just a simple stroll through the office. However, be careful, because if Springtrap and a survivor are going in the place at the same time...
This one.
That's the main interaction for killer, but survivors get to use the camera system, and this lets them have a good eye look around in the map. See generators, survey the map, but most importantly, keep a track of Springtrap. If you keep an eye on him long enough, he's revealed to everyone on the map. Springtrap can counter this by throwing the axe to disable the door and cameras for survivors while still having full access to himself, or by finding the survivor and grabbing them. Survivors should keep in mind though that the cameras do have a technical cooldown by having a battery system which depletes fully if you just sit in the cameras for too long. Which is a pretty cool mechanic, all things considered, even shows you on the doors. But the only downside with the camera ability is I've rarely seen anyone actually use it. Most of the people you see using it are people new to the kill and wanting to mess around. The average person you face may use it sparingly or not at all. It's not exactly the fault of behavior, it's a solid way of implementing the camera system. It's just that some people choose not to use it to its fullest potential. Kinda like how you see some people not using Vecna's items. Overall, I really enjoy how they implemented Springtrap to Dead by Daylight. It's unique and different, but still having aspects of his character like the jump scares, the cameras, and the office. It's all just nice. But before we move on to the map, I wanted to just talk about some perks you can try on them. For base game perks, all of Pinhead's perks recently became universal perks, so you can use them if you so desire, but for this video, I decided not to. Personally, I think perks like Bitter Murmur, Predator, Brutal are really solid options, especially Brutal. It lets you keep up with the yellow advance, especially with the purple add-on that increases braking speed. For non-licensed perks, there's some fun ones, especially with hiding your aura. You can use the Faz coin to do it, but there's other perks like the Unknown's Unforeseen or the newly buffed Dark Devotion, which are fun ways to get yourself some undetectable, as well as Bamboozle and Unbound for Windows plays. I think aura reading to get some cheeky shots is how I'm gonna like him though. For licensed perks, the floodgates open honestly. Wesker's Superior Anatomy to get fast vaults on top of the poster is gonna be insane. A perk I've been really enjoying is I'm All Ears and Lethal for more aura reading and to help get those orbitals. But really, there's a perk for anything you want to do. Want stealth? Run Dark Devotion, Tinkerer, or Trials of Torment. Want chase aggression? Then run Disillusion, Batteries Not Included, Unbound, and Superior Anatomy. Want aura reading? Run I'm All Ears, Lethal Pursuer, Phantom Fear, or Nowhere to Hide. There's just so many options. It's hard to really make it a definitive build, and I like killers who have so much variety like that. Freddy Fazbear's Pizza has opened up a new branch in Greenville, which is nice to see. Glad they were able to get past that whole, child disappearing in bites of various states. Sadly, it seems their budget was just too low, as Foxy is nowhere to be seen, which is a shame. And no, the plushie does not count. I want to see my glorious king in his true form. But it's still a pretty solid rendition of the FNAF building, although mostly inspired from the movie, which there's nothing wrong with, especially when there's more material to work with in that movie compared to the games. It's got a bunch of long, wacky loops, an Easter egg with the animatronics coming to life when the main gen is completed, and an arcade area with a ball pit, likely inspired from Into the Pit, and some other neat bits and pieces. The cupcake is hiding inside the lockers, and has a rare chance of appearing too, kinda like Jonesy on the Alien map. But for the life of me, I couldn't get it to activate, so I recommend watching D-Strike's video on all the Easter eggs on the map. I linked it in the description. The outside of the map is what you would expect. It shares a lot of loops and map layout with Greenville, so not too bad all things considered. Overall, it's a pretty faithful rendition of the movie. And sure is a pizzeria. My only dislike is Foxy's always been my favorite animatronic, and he's nowhere to be found in his glorious metal form, which breaks my heart. Hopefully, the balance changes don't do the same. Another chapter means more things to change, and it's a very sizable list this time, so let's talk about the quality of life stuff first. They finally changed how AFK crows work, to mainly counteract situations where your teammate or killer just trap you in a spot and let you die by making you lose collision at the third crow, while removing this during endgame scenarios. They also added additional AFK measures, which I really like, especially survivors now gain crows if they're not interacting and progressing the match. If you're running aimlessly, you'll gain crows, and eventually you'll gain free crows. Realistically, this won't activate a normal match, but in matches where you're stuck with survivors who hide around and refuse to play to tempt you to abandon the match, it's a godsend. I remember a few years ago, playing a bummer match and spending 20 minutes trying to find 2 survivors in Larry's, so part of me is just beaming with joy knowing that they will suffer. Blood point dumping is made super convenient now, as you put in the amount you want and then let the game do its work. You see me getting Springtrap from 0 to already past Prestige 3 in seconds. On top of that, they also remove the random dialogue that pops when you get to level 2 and 10 once you've done it once. gamma settings have been added. I know a lot of people were clamoring for this. I know I was a long time ago because my old TV was just so dark that I couldn't see the corners of mid, which, once again, past me is happy to hear, even if that was almost 4 years ago. Jesus Christ, 4 years ago? Now for the biggest quality of life change to Dead by Daylight, the going next prevention mechanic. Firstly, they increased the overall DC penalty. Now you have to play 20 matches without going next or DCing to lose the point. It doesn't passively leave unlike previously, so good change starting off, but the going next mechanic is basically, they've removed the ability to Kobe as base kit, which honestly sucks, you can't do it, but if it prevents stuff like this, I'm fine with it. If this system detects that you're purposely killing yourself, you get the DC penalty and lose a whole grade, which is crazy for people who are getting grades for BP. However, you can still unhook yourself if you fit the following criteria. You're running a perk that lets you unhook yourself. Think of Slippery Meat, Wicked, and Deli. You have a perk that boosts luck, like Up the Ante or just luck-based offerings. Thankfully, Behavior were smart with the system, as you can kill yourself on hook if there's 2 or more survivors left, so you can still give your teammate hatch, but in situations where it's just not that, then tough luck. Overall, it's a good change, something the game's been needing for a long time, but we'll just have to see if the mechanic is implemented correctly or not. They did a small change to the endgame Mori, which has been needed for a while now. You can kill the survivor while the other's on death hook, then waiting for them to drag it on, something I'm glad is finally in the game as well, as them now making map offerings no longer guaranteed, now being a flat 20%, which is very nice, as we're getting to a point where map offerings were overwhelming. Although I personally never really had to deal with it, I saw a map offering and I just locked in, honestly. But getting sent to Macmillan or Area Crows for the 10 billionth time does get a little tiresome. They also did some improvements to custom games, mainly letting you be able to have multiple spectators and other improvements, but for the final improvement, survivor spawns have changed. So survivors spawn closer to each other than having instant multiple gen pressure, and now the shroud offerings have more value. One lets you separate from the other survivors, letting you get more gens done, like it was previously, while killers have shroud offerings, which makes it so it negates the other shroud offerings. Helpful, since I can see Swifts loving this offering, honestly. Overall, a lot of new changes for Dead by Daylight, and honestly, gigantic things as well, trying to tackle the wave of people throwing matches by going next and the often spotty spawning mechanics. Post-editing me here, during the development of this video, a bunch of things has happened related to the quality of life stuff, so I thought I'd put it at the end. The first thing is AFK crows seem to be a little bit too crazy. Sometimes it activates like at points where it really shouldn't, like when you're doing totems and stuff, like trying to find ruin and stuff like that, which is kind of lame. Hopefully they'll fix that in the future. But the other thing is they actually kill switched the going next prevention mechanic, mainly because people were being banned for being tunneled. That was always going to be a problem. I do think it's still a really good mechanic. Of course, they're going to have to, tinker with it a little and just adjust it for, tunneling and stuff like that. But I think it's a good start. Obviously, it's probably not because it's been kill switched, but hey, it happens. That's just Dead by Daylight for you. It's just nice to see, but onto the balance changes. Vecna has gotten some massive changes, mainly to having his spell straight away be able to cast, all respectively having less cooldowns as well. Some solid changes to how the Dispelling Spear works, and overall buff, increase the time he's in air with fly by a second and reduce his recovery, which is nice since the fly add-on was basically used by most people for that reason. But Vecna did get nerfed mainly in the most boring of his spells, Mage Hand. Survivors get a longer haste by half a second, and also get more aura reading when he uses the spell for the corresponding gauntlet or boots you're wearing, as well as some add-on tweaking to make up for the changes. But overall, as someone who likes Vecna, I think they're very healthy changes, and we'll have to play more in the future. The only other killer change is with twins. Victor now gets into chases with survivors. This doesn't sound that amazing on the surface, but this means that perks that work while during chase will now activate, which in the long run is kind of nothing, but hey, they're getting something, I guess. Now going into perks, we'll start with Killer. Batteries included got a -2% haste nerf, but it got its range increased to 16 meters, so you'll get more of the perk, but the perk will be weaker overall. Cooler Brian has gotten a notable buff, and something it's desperately needed for some time now, being 150% for 70 seconds, with the perks around it when it was oppressive being way weaker. It might finally be able to get some value, because the effect it's had for the longest time was cartoonishly bad. The only reason you would run it is for the aura rating, and even then, other perks did it better. Thrilling Tremors got a massive perk cooldown reduction, making it more viable. It was already a pretty decent perk to slot on, but now being able to get the value way more often will make it just so much better. Superior Anatomy got some nice changes to it, being activated and reduction of cooldowns. I think this is what the perk needed to be more viable, it being easier to proc and having a tiny cooldown change. I like running fast vaulting builds, so this will make them proc more often, which I like. Dark Devotion is a perk I like to mess around with, and it got a healthy buff, which I love to see, mainly to it lasting longer and having a larger tear radius, which, all things considered, is something that will make the perk more fun to run, even in niche situations. Terminus got a 15-second buff on how long it's activated after the exit gates are opened. This perk still likely won't be run, but it's just a nice little bonus for a perk that kinda needed it. Hex Retribution got a buff in its Oblivious and its Aura reading, so now when it actually does break, you actually will get slightly more value. Hopefully it's not the first one that breaks after Undying, because I've had that happen way too much, and I want to actually get value from this perk, honestly. Unbound has been nerfed. It was originally 10% and now it's 7%, which I think is pretty fair because, you know, it was going to be with that whole haste stacking stuff that they decided not to go with, and they just forgot to nerf it, I guess. And for the final change, thwack. I swear, they're trying their hardest to make this perk viable, but hey, in its current state, that's not too bad, especially with a 36-meter scream. That's absolutely gigantic, but will likely be a thing where the strong killers will love this perk, where the weaker ones will barely get any value, but we'll just have to wait and see. I'll probably try this on Oni, it seems pretty interesting. On the Survivor side, weaker perks have gotten some cooldown reductions or effects removed completely, with one nerf being Babysitter, being reverted to its original state of 10% haste, which is nice, as it feels fair for it being an anti-tunnel perk. Body Knowledge no longer has that annoying item efficiency reduction thing, so you can heal yourself with a medkit at that 50% bonus speed. Both Champion and Light and Lightweight got exclusively cooldown reductions, and Desperate Measures now has a max of 80% when all 4 survivors are injured, compared to the previous 56, which might bring the perk into some viability. You love to see it. But now on more interesting changes, Exaltation charges items by 75% than the 25%, and the cooldown reduction as well. I think this is a fine change, but it might be a little problematic in situations with survivors baiting stuns to get an almost fully charged toolbox, but I doubt it'll be problematic, honestly. Counterforce, on top of having 25% as base, it also increased by 25 for every totem you cleanse, with now 14 whole seconds to see where the furthest totem is, which is so nice because I'm not going to remember a location that appears for 4 seconds. The first second is seeing the aura, let alone pinpointing it, so a great change overall, but a nightmare for Hex fans. Post-editing me here, I just want to add that Empathetic Connection got a change, so instead of it being meter related, it's anywhere on the map, so now survivors can see you anywhere, instead of being at 32 meters at rank 1, 64 meters at rank 2, and 96 at rank 3. They also made it so healing is now 35% instead of it being 30, and, you know, the tiers are lower by 5% each. So yeah, a pretty solid change, especially since it's meant to be a healing perk and it doesn't work on you. And finally, both Lightbringer and Evaser got some changes to mainly how the points occur, adding some of the newer mechanics to the system like boons and invocations, or tinkering with chase points for the Evader medals, so that's nice. Overall, very by-the-books changes, nothing too crazy of note, just a lot of quality of life changes on perks that needed a little bit of extra, and a killer, while pretty good, has a fairly slow start. We'll have to wait and see how all of these changes affect the game in the long run, but I do like the changes overall. Now, let's wrap this video up with the perk showcase on Wraith. Another update, another set of perks, which gives me the excuse to talk about them on my favorite killer, Wraith. So that's what we're gonna do before we wrap things up. Haywire is a perk that I know a lot of people have been wanting for a while. It is a perk that punishes people for 99 in gates and forces endgame scenarios. Pair it with Remember Me, and the gates, once a simple task, feels Herculean to open. On stronger killers, or maybe a little help of Noed, it can be overwhelming, honestly. At least the PTB version was. I do think making it 80% makes the perk lose almost a lot of its pressure, but then again, you'll likely see it on endgame builds, which isn't that popular anyways, but the more options is always nice. I just wish it was the 50% originally was. Help Wanted is a sick concept for a perk, and Stacks of Singularity's perk too. The last gen you kicked becomes compromised, and when it's completed, you get rewarded with increased recovery speed on successful attacks. It's very notable, and this lasts a whole minute. Pair it with machine learning, and you'll get a lot of value from a bad situation. I don't think it's the greatest perk, but it's gonna be the one that'll be fun to mess around with things like Coop, Save the Best for Last, and things like that, which I support. Phantom Fear requires a terror radius, so you already know it's gonna be a bad one, but there's some ways to work with it. Perks that transfer terror radiuses can be good, or you can use the meme add-on to get value, but it was obviously not made for self-killers in mind, so I can't rag on it too much. Overall, we've got some fun perks for Wraith to mess around with. I might even use Phantom Fear for the funny, but with that all said and done, let's finish this video. The immeasurable hype that Five Nights at Freddy's has had on the Dead by Daylight community is hard to put into words, but actually having it in the game in general just feels so strange. But it does come with people who wish for more, or feel somewhat disappointed with what we got. I get that, but all things considered, I think they did a good adaptation. Springtrap looks right, and the map is filled with neat Easter eggs, but I do feel that wanting for more. At last, that's what sucks about being a fan of something that comes to a game that you enjoy. With that all being said, thank you for watching this video. I think it was quite unfortunate that I got sick while I was recording this video, but hey, I'll just need 5 nights in Betty. Horrible jokes aside, when the anniversary video comes out, I'll link it in the title card and the description. But what did you think of the good old Yellow Rabbit? What would you add in a possible second chapter? Let me know in the comments, and if you like Dead by Daylight and JRPGs, why not like and subscribe, and have a good one.